What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, back with some more Power Station. Going back to their self-titled album. I did want to mention already that even after just 3 tunes, I am hearing strains of like sound types and a style that I think comes to a sort of like a fruition on Notorious, which is to say I can hear the influence of Power Station in Notorious. And I mentioned when I was going through the Arcadia album that I could hear, very much a Duran flavor, if a bit, sort of, I don't know, more esoteric or more sort of experimental. But yeah, so basically, a number of you have commented that you can hear both sets of influences of these side projects in later Duran. And I certainly agree. Like I said, already after 3 tracks, I picked up on a bit of a flavor that reminds me of some things that I heard going through Notorious. So, yeah, that is something that's on my mind as I go through this album. Once again, shout out to the guys here, Robert Palmer, Andy and John Taylor, as well as Tony Thompson. So yeah, and it says, again, it makes a point that the album was produced by Bernard Edwards, so shout out to him as well. So we're up to a tune called Communication. Obviously, it's a concept relating to the transmission of information between one party to another, whether that party is a group of people or just an individual. And obviously there are different forms of communication, verbal, like nonverbal, gestural, like body language, particular like coded systems, whether it's semaphore flags or something else. There are all sorts of manners by which one may communicate information, and of course the information can be technical in nature, or it could be emotional, or it could be ethical / moral. There are a number of types of information and perspective that can be conveyed through one medium or another. And then obviously communication refers to the desire or the necessity of passing along information, meaning it relates to a larger context, whether it's just getting someone from a state of ignorance to a state of knowledge, or whether it relates to an urgent pressing matter, perhaps a danger or an emergency that has to be dealt with. It could relate to the passing along of traditions and ways of life to a younger generation, such that it is the perpetuation of a culture, of a society, and so on. These are all forms of communication. Obviously, there is potentially communication strictly for self-edification. You want to ask someone a question just out of pure intellectual interest. So yeah, the nature of communication could relate to a number of different things, but it does suggest wider context, even if that context is I just wanted to know, or if it is more pressing in terms of we had this problem but we need your expertise on how to deal with it. I suspect a lot of songs, and whether it's Duran or Power Station here, and indeed I'm thinking about Murderess, which is very much about like a particular flavor of female character out in the dating world. It was a type of like psychological analysis on dating. I do wonder whether communication might relate to romantic entanglements or romantic bonds and so on. So maybe I'll be off base there, but we'll have to see. As I always say, I'll try to pick up as much of it as I go. I'm getting a little self-conscious. I'm getting, there's more activity, more comments on the channel, which I absolutely love, and I appreciate you all. But I am getting like more comments that like, hey, you should do the video this way. And there was someone, what was it? I think it was like a punk rock reaction. No, actually, I think it was a synth pop reaction, but I think it was like a Yaz reaction. But someone like literally said like, hey, I like your reactions, but don't talk during the songs. It was like, oh crap. So again, I'm going to try to continue to improve the way I do things, and I really don't mean to step on a song or like a nice line or a good moment when I'm commenting on, a synth sound or whatever. So I'll do my best to kind of stay out of the track's way, but I am getting a little more self-conscious about how to do these things. So in any case, let's get to it. This is Communication by the Power Station on their album of the same name. Wow. Feel there was some sort of drum roll coming there.
Depends on you. You got to stay in touch even though you're on
The drums really are explosive. People have been talking about how this album has like big, powerful drum sounds. I feel it. Is it like xylophone too? In this case, it seems like the situation, the necessity is an emotional one. Oof. Like a dragon, like a guitar dragon. Boom, 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 boom. Right when I mentioned the guitar, the bass is gonna pop in. I love that. There's a sincerity to this like plea though, like that line makes me laugh, right? The idea of being in a relationship and the communication's breaking down and, you feel like you're on hold, so to speak, and your friend's like, oh, how's your relationship going? Nah, sorry, I'm still on hold, man. It's like been a couple hours now, like whatever. But no, like it does seem like it is about a sort of emotional and maybe romantic connection and communication. And he's basically saying, we have to keep that flame alive. Right? Like, don't go long periods of time without talking to me. Don't hang up. Like, we need this connection. And again, it seems very like sincere and impassioned. So it seems ambiguous as to the feelings of the other person. It seems like maybe the woman in question, is drifting away enough to the point where he's like having to say these things that like, hey, don't hang up on me, or we need to like keep that call going. But I do like the metaphor of emotional ties as represented through like electromechanical communication and technology. And indeed, it's funny that I mentioned Yazoo, because it's a song by Yazoo. I think it's called Bad Connection, and it's basically kind of the same vibe that like, I've been calling but you're not answering, and it's like, it could be literal in that like, I've left messages like, why haven't you called me back? There's a bad connection here, but it's also like emotionally or interpersonally, like a connection is going off, like I can't hear you, I don't have reception, even if these songs were written before the era of cell phones. But yeah, I do think there's a similar metaphor at play here from what I picked up. Let me know if you have a different take, or if you think I'm off base there. But yeah, it's cool. Like I said, I noticed the sort of powerful percussion and the big drums in the album. Also, the sort of brass hits I enjoyed at the beginning. They were kind of like really sharp and sort of grabbing your attention as the track started. The guitar growled and stood out in that one section in particular. The bass came sort of popping in right after that. So again, it's another one where the different elements kind of have their moments to stand out, and then they also blend together well. So yeah, a cool tune. I'm enjoying the album. As I said, it's another one that gives me those sort of like pop, sort of jazzy kind of feels a little bit, which the Notorious album, it had that sort of like groovy, a bit of a jazz flavor, a bit of the brass element. So again, I am feeling a connection to that album, which would come after this. But anyway, the next one we'll be listening to is Get It On, and then parenthetically, Bang a Gong. I like the idea of Get It On, Bang a Gong. It has a nice sort of like phonetic or syllabic flow to it. So I'll think more about that title when we come back to that one, but obviously it suggests a very sort of physical, percussive interaction, which I suppose could go a few different ways. But yeah, let me know what you think of this one. Other than that, I will see you next time. Peace.